The only reason we ever knew that, it was because we fortunately did a moose census in time.
Well, I mean, is there a chance that we could just start darting? Have you guys had this? I know that you're not on the board of game anymore, and neither one of you, but is there any way we can just like introduce a rule that we need to start darting the moose with Viagra to keep up with the wolf population?
Well, that isn't the problem.
I mean,
the problem is that 100 moose cows will have between 120 and 140 calves in the spring. If they get 50 of them to the fall, that's good. If they get 30 of them into the next spring, that's good. So that it isn't that the wolves and the bears are eating up the adult moose. They're eating those cute little baby moose like popcorn. And that's the problem.
Well, and who wouldn't?
Yeah.
They're just that tasty. You know, I want to bring up a couple of numbers here and get your take on it. You know, I understand what the goal is this abundance. And Vic brought it up, this whole idea that we're going to have abundance, which is sort of it's sort of a Bible word. It gives you that like, ooh, abundance, like streets of gold kind of warm feeling. And in the ADF&G's harvest numbers in 4 predator control areas where the increasing harvestable moose was a primary goal, so they brought in this whole thing, there was a net gain harvest of 30 moose. Okay, so in that time, there had been about $400,000 spent on selling predator control and that whole idea, all of this. So if you look at it, it's at about $13,333 per moose, or if it's 500, if you get at least 500 pounds off of each moose, it's $26.66 per pound. But if you look at how much we spent on predator control, it was $3.8 million. That moose is at $253 a pound to get those 30 extra moose. If the point is to give us 30 more moose to gain, this is what we're paying for it. My God, they could be eating caviar instead of subsistence out there.
Except your basic assumption is wrong. Your basic assumption is that because the harvest numbers only went up 30%, or 30 moose, that the total moose population only went up a little bit. The total moose population went up quite a bit.
Well, why bring those numbers up to a certain level if you're not going to be harvesting them? That's the entire point.
You have to get the herd up to where it can sustain more harvest. And what the Board of Game does is it looks at those populations and says, this population of moose in this game management unit can sustain this much harvest. And so that's all we're going to allow to happen. We're going to issue that many permits, or we're going to have short seasons. We're going to do whatever we have to do. Just make sure that no more than 30 moose get shot out of those areas. Now next year that could be 60, and the year after it could be 300, because the population of the moose are increasing, and that's a classic example of that is in Bethel. We went there and said, the moose are gone. We've had predator problems, we've had hunting problems.
Sorry, Bethel.
So
Kidding.
we went to and said to all the villages and the people in Bethel, you guys willing to do a 5-year moratorium on moose hunting in this area? And they said, yeah, we'll do that if you do a predator control. And so we said, cool, let's do that. And we're not going to allow any hunting seasons, and we're going to keep doing the predator control until there are X number of moose in this area. And then at the end of the 5 years, we'd met that goal. And so we opened up a moose season there. But again, we're only going to allow this many to be harvested.
Yeah, but I've seen the Board of Game do things like open up predator control at the same time that they're opening up a cow hunt in the same place. I mean, that doesn't jive with this science.
The perfect example, again, is McGrath, where we talked about what's going on there. And we just came back from the Board of Game meeting in Fairbanks, and the moose scientists, there's one scientific moose biologist in the state, and he's working in McGrath.
God, he's working hard. Yeah, there's a lot of moose.
And this is an area where we're conducting the most aggressive predator control at this time. We have areas that allow aerial gunning of, same-day aerial gunning of bears, all bears, brown bears, black bears. They allow the snaring this year of all bears, cubs, sows, anything, doesn't matter. And they have areas that they're calling for 100% eradication of predators. In this same region, we have the scientific biologists coming back going, look, we've got 40% browse removal, meaning the food is 40% of it's gone. We got 10% twinning rates, which from a scientific standpoint means that the moose population is maxed out. The country cannot sustain any more moose, yet at the very same time we're conducting the most aggressive predator control. When they came out in 2003 and said we'll do this out in McGrath, it was to bring the moose population up and stop. There's no end, and that's the problem with intensive management. There can't be an end because that law states that as you increase the numbers of human opportunity, the harvest, you cannot decrease that opportunity without doing predator control. So as you increase the harvest to deal with no predators being out there, you continually set the stage for not being able to decrease it unless you kill predators. So it's
Well,
a
I think maybe
catch-22.
what we have to do is have the moose start eating the wolves. It's the only fair thing.
That
We've
works.
got to run to a break. We're going to be back with questions from our panel, and you can be here next week at Thursday at 5:30 at Bernie's Bungalow in the upstairs lounge. All right, welcome back. I love this part, and I've got lifelines here to answer some of the questions. So we'll see. We'll try to get it through. We've got a lot of them. I know, surprise. Why can't we have a non-hunter on the Board of Game? Wildlife viewers spend twice as much, at least in-state, than hunters do.
Simple answer. The legislature will not confirm a person to the game board who is not 110% in favor of predator control.
I don't agree with that at all.
Has anyone been confirmed to the Board of Game that isn't
Well,
in favor
first
of
you have
this?
to have a governor appoint them. That's the problem.
We had a governor, his name was Tony Knowles, and he appointed several people to the board, including me, who did not receive confirmation simply because they were not perceived as 110% behind predator control.
The Board of Game is set up to have 7 members on it, and none of those seats are allocated to anybody.
Do you think that it might be a good idea to have, like, say, maybe 2 that are subsistence-oriented, perhaps from rural
They do
villages?
that. They always have an Alaska Native on the board.
Okay, so they've got their token, and then what if they had a token other person too that was like, oh, I don't know, someone that runs bear watching or more, I mean, do you think that would?
No, I think it's a bad idea. I don't think any of those seats on that board should be allocated to anybody.
So you don't think that the one that's allocated now to Alaska
It's
Native
not
should
allocated to an Alaska Native. It just so happens that they have one on the board.
Oh, okay.
There
I thought you
has-
said that it was
the mandates
allocated.
are to represent all Alaskans.
That's
You
right.
read the legislative mandates of the Board of Game, it is to represent all Alaskans.
Okay, so-
And why can't we have somebody from the tourism industry who relies on wildlife on the Board of Game who also is an avid hunter?
I agree.
I
Okay,
work.
great, we all agreed. End of the show, we agreed. No, I'm kidding, I'm totally kidding. We're not at the end of
We
the show.
can't have somebody from the tourism industry on there who is an avid hunter because he might not be conducive to killing pups in a den.
Well, this
know?
seems like what it's come down to, that I know the Board of Game makes a lot of decisions, but what it comes down to is that this is just the crux of it. Okay, next question, because we just did one. I am a small business owner who relies on summer tourists. What do you say to business owners who will suffer because of the boycotts that have already started because of the perception of our predator control practices? I don't want to discuss the value of those, the perception to the nation.
We killed 14 pups, I think, down in southern Alaska Peninsula. Those 14 pups didn't do anything to save that southern Alaska Peninsula herd, but nobody on the Board of Game discussed the potential impact to the tourism industry. They never discussed it. It was not an essential component of that predator control program, so that's a perfect example of where Alaskans are being disenfranchised on the Board of Game.
Let me assure everybody here, because I was on the Board of Game at that time, that we never instructed the staff to go down there and kill wolf pups. The Board of Game did not instruct the staff to go kill wolf pups. What happened there was that southern peninsula caribou herd had gone from 6,000 animals down to 700. And they were having like 1 or 2 calves per 100 cows survive the calving season, because this one population of wolves was going on there and eating all the calves up. So the decision was made, we got to do something about that. So the next spring, They went down in a helicopter and they shot the wolves that were on the calving grounds. Well, they shot a wolf that had pups. And they figured that out. They went and found the pups in the den, and they had to do something with them. They couldn't find anybody to take them, so they killed them. It was an unfortunate thing to happen, but the Board of Game certainly didn't tell them to go do it. Now, let me tell you,
I think
that
it was
caribou herd's coming back big time right now
right
because
but-
of that.
Okay, so that goes on to the next question.